Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where we take a look at every classic Doctor Who story plus a bunch of Big Finish audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 29th of August 2019, we are starting to look at the third story of the fifth series of Fourth Doctor Adventures with the Paradox Planet, starting with Part 1. Now, the Paradox Planet is a story that is really good and really fun because it has a really good idea behind it. This was written by Jonathan Morris, who wrote, who he writes a lot of Big Finish, but of the Big Finish that he has written currently, he wrote The Antimatter. He wrote. He wrote some. He adapted The Valley of Death, and he wrote Phantoms of the Deep, Last of the Colophon, and Cloisters of Terror. This is after this one. The next, obviously, this is 2 releases. He has one more story for the Fourth Doctor, and that's it. But Jonathan Morris, this is one where he, and with a lot, with same with kind of with like like The Antimatter, this is more of a, this is a more comedic story. Like, yeah, there's kind of a serious thing, like a big portion of the story is built around the idea that this takes place around a war, and a lot of. A lot of, there's a lot of fighting here, but it's still kind of sort of comedic because it sort of plays around with absurdist themes about said war. Like, this isn't like a standard, oh, there's a war that needs to be stopped. No, this is the war itself is about the it is about the this is a story about a war on a planet where the descendants are traveling back in time, are basically traveling back in time to basically kill their ancestors for destroying their planet, which is, well, it's why it's called a paradox planet. This is a planet that, this is a planet where everything is, is a paradox. Instead of these sort of a sane and standard story, this is one where this story takes place in an area where time is completely out of sync, everything is crazy. You get a real sense of danger and fear, like, hey, this is a really dangerous situation because a paradox like this, there's a reason the TARDIS is just sort of dragged into events and basically forced to land and become part of events. Now, this is a good episode. It's perhaps doesn't do enough to spread out some of its ideas before really getting into it, which is, at least partially, which is partially interesting because this story has technically 4 episodes to really let itself play out in. But you have a lot of the Doctor and Romana splitting up here. The Doctor has his plot, Romana has her plot, and they're essentially split up for quite a bit of the runtime. which isn't bad. It makes a lot of sense, and it gives a nice solid consistency to the plot itself. And it allows a lot of the world to be explored and explored through the audience pretty quickly. It just doesn't move things. Perhaps it does sort of feel like Jonathan Morris may have started this as a longer story, but it's still very solid. There's also just a lot of really good humor here. You have a story where you really do get a good sense of what's going, like a really fun sense that this is an idea that would have been done in other other stories. It's really really good. And it's a lot of fun. It's flawed, perhaps. Um, you know, there's a bit of techno babble here. Uh, you know, there's there's a lot of techno babble, but it's still a lot of fun. Um, this is still a very good, a very not only a very good story, but a very good story where you have a sense, this good sense of what um, you know of what really, here's the start, here's what we're doing. um, you know you're playing a lot with a lot of time travel. um, and Jonathan Morse does a good job of explaining his ideas all in the first episode, sort of really showing that Jonathan Morse as a writer is one who, he knows what he's doing, he knows where he's going. It just perhaps needed a little more time and a little more character development to get going, but we could be having the first episode of the story of this Fourth Doctor Adventures that really hits it out of the park. Like, this first episode is a great opener. Um, you know, much like, uh, you know, so it's all going to be down to see how much it goes and where things go. So overall, I'm going to give The Paradox Planet Part 1 an 8 out of 10. All right, it is the 30th of August 2019, and I just finished listening to Part 2 of The Paradox Planet. Part 2 of The Paradox Planet is amazing. Yeah, I'm going to be honest, this is a great story. This is one of the Fourth Doctor adventures to really look out for. The Part 2 does so many things perfectly. It adds in some great little twists and turns here, basically so you can get the story moving and keep the story going. Jonathan Morris does a really, really good job. There's actually some really good commentary, basically on the idea that the people of this planet obviously feel, in the future, they feel like their ancestors have failed them. Morris is most obviously sort of commenting on global warming and global warming, and just sort of what the humans are doing to the planet. Like, there's like this amazing description of just the squalor of the future is done by in sort of this monologue that it doesn't feel awkward. It's not an awkward sort of monologue. It's more of a really, really good monologue, and in a monologue that really um, that's really, really sort of shows, like, how could anyone live like this. It really sort of sees where you can get the people from the future's idea of going back in time to try to quote unquote save everything, at least save everything as best as they can, and sort of punish their punish their ancestors for for bringing together a um, bringing together a complete and total world. There's some ideas though that also this isn't helping. There's also it's sort of also just this commentary on sort of like trying to help, but not actually helping matters when you're trying to help. Like you get the sense that um, the characters here from the future, they want to help. The characters from the past are naive about what they're doing to the planet, but like the characters in the future aren't great either. You have this scientist who basically has a sort of in microcosm animals taken from the from the past and brought to the future. There's even some implications here that the the whole story itself is being done. Um, you know, the whole tragedy is being caused by is being caused by all the time travel. There's this great, uh, you know, there's this great moment um, of like where you get this sense that um, there's this sense that um, the whole like in the past something more is going on, partially because there's a easy answer to this. This time there's an easy answer, sort of kind of being a parallel to the potential that we've got. We've got the idea of a potential um, you know you've got the potential for the the safety, but for some reason nobody uh, nobody is really doing stuff. um, it's uh, it's not one of those um, it's one of those stories where you have the real um, you know you really have this complicated story, and it's something um, and it's something that uh, that the character um, that the character really works. It is that you have this big plot, and you have a lot of this really good twist near the end where you have this whole idea the um, where the Doctor is essentially a uh, uh, is essentially a like that the Doctor is a prophet and sought to bring times like things are foretold. There's showing that Jonathan Morris has just this deeper understanding of doing a um, of doing a you know, of doing this sort of time travel story. So over there's just this intricate the intricate nature is done really, really well, and you really feel like Paradox Planet Part 2 leads you off on such a good note that it's great. So overall, I'm going to give the Paradox Planet Part 2 a 9 out of 10. That being said, we add up the scores and average them out to give the Paradox Planet a final score of 8.5 out of 10. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like, comment if you haven't already, and subscribe. And join me next time when we take a look at the second half of this 2-part story. With the conclusion to the story and the 4th release in the 5th series of 4th Doctor Adventures with Legacy of Death.